Welcome to Cool Tunes for a Hot Planet, the podcast that uses music to inspire us in the struggle against climate change. Songs to warm your soul so you can help cool the world.
Hi, I'm Warren Senders, and this is Cool Tunes for Hot Planet, episode 20, Thinking About Woody. Guillaume Letier's 1811 painting, Homer singing his Iliad at the gates of Athens, is a representative image of the Western world's concept of the bard. A solitary figure, sometimes blind, always charismatic, possessed of an elephantine memory and a stock-in-trade of phrases, songs, legends, epics, and genealogies. For centuries, bards in Croatia have played the one-string fiddle called a gusle while singing legends and history. Here is the great guslar Mile Krajina singing about a Croatian military hero from the 19th century. Here the Malian bard Adama Kammisoko plays the kamalangoni, the hunter's harp, as he sings stories of great hunts from bygone days. And here's Woody Guthrie, the 20th century's bard, the voice of the oppressed and the underclass, singing a story of a woman defending her home.
She rose from her blanket with a gun in each hand, said, "Come all of you cowboys, fight for your land."
But America was a new land, one where the old traditions and legends no longer held sway. Guthrie scholar Will Kaufman makes the point that Woody's bardic imagination expressed itself in singing about the land and the people who lived on it.
I think part of his mythology does have to do with his ability to gobble up space, geography. But actually, particular locations are really important to him. New York was incredibly important to him. California was important to him, the Pacific Northwest, the Texas Panhandle. So that you have a sense through his songs often of location. You have a sense of the visual of what it looks like on the plains, or what it looks like on the sea, or what it looks like in the Pacific Northwest along the Columbia River Gorge. So all these things are really crucial if you want to get the most out of Woody.
Woody Guthrie first entered the national imagination in the late 1930s, helped by the great folklorist and researcher Alan Lomax. Pete Seeger tells the story from an interview with WAMC's Alan Chartock.
Much has been made of your travels with Woody Guthrie. How did you meet him?
Woody had met an actor named Will Geer, and he and Will had been performing for the strikers up in the lettuce fields up in the California Valley. And then Will got a job east in a play called Tobacco Road. And Will persuaded the producers of the play to let him run a midnight benefit concert for California agricultural workers. And he wrote a letter, "Woody, if you can be here by March, a lot of people will hear you and you'll get some jobs." So Woody hitchhiked east, and going through Pennsylvania in the month of February is when he jotted down the verses we now call "This Land Is Your Land."
This land is your land, and this land is my land, from the California to the New York Island.
And I was working in Washington, D.C. with a quite extraordinary man called Alan Lomax, the curator of the Archive of American Folk Song. Well, we drove up from Washington and we met Woody. And Alan said, "For the first time in my life, I meet a real old-time ballad maker. The kind who wrote the Ballad of Jesse James."
Just about the worst gun battle ever out on the western plains. When me and a bunch of cowboys run in with Jesse James. Come a cow, cow, yicky, come a cow, cow, yicky, yicky, yay.
And he said, Woody, we've got a recording studio down in the Library of Congress. So Woody went down, and for 3 days, all he did was talk and sing into a microphone, and one disc after another was put on the machine. And that's when he met me. He let me tag along after him when he went back to Texas to visit his family. 6 months, I managed to go out to Montana and down to Florida, and especially spent time along the Appalachian Mountains where people picked a banjo. Wonderful place.
Woody's second major disciple was Ramblin Jack Elliott, and in this recording, Ramblin Jack sings Woody's great Dust Bowl ballad, Pretty Boy Floyd.
Now as through this world I've rambled, I've seen lots of funny men. Some will rob you with a 6-gun, and some with a fountain pen.
In Will Kaufman's first book, Woody Guthrie, American Radical, he leads us through Woody's journey of transformation, telling us how the Dust Bowl transformed Woody Guthrie's politics and understanding of economic inequality.
It was in Texas that he encountered the Dust Bowl. You know, he traveled to California about 1937, 36, 37. He went out there because he wanted to be a singing cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
So his cousin, Oklahoma Jack Guthrie, was already out there, and so that was the plan. And he got a program on the KFVD radio station in Los Angeles, and found out really that his audience were the Dust Bowl refugees who had come out to California. At one point, his station manager said, "Look, I want you to do some reporting on the conditions in the migrant camps." So when he went into these migrant camps and began to hear the stories of the lives of the people who came there, and they would begin also to write into his station, he realized that they were listening to his program. I think when he saw the way that the Dust Bowl migrants were being treated, that really is the first real political force that he meets with. Because he had read a little bit of Marx, he read a little bit of stuff when he was still back in Texas. Mm-hmm. But it's when it gets translated from theory to life, that's really where he saw that because of the Dust Bowl. Not only the migration from Texas to California, but also encountering the other migrants there.
Woody's Dust Bowl ballads have continued to resonate throughout the decades. Their themes are universal. Here's master folk musician and friend of the program, John McCutcheon, playing hammer dulcimer, singing a verse of Pastures of Plenty.
It's always I've rambled that river and I. Through this green valley I will work till I die. This land I'll defend with my life if it be. These pastures of plenty must always be free. This land I'll defend with my life if it be. Pastures of plenty must always be free.
Singer, songwriter, and composer Joshuah Brian Campbell was nominated for an Oscar for his song Stand Up from the movie Harriet. Here, in a 2017 performance, he sings Guthrie's Do-Re-Mi. I asked Will Kaufman to join me in listening to some performances of Guthrie's music and to offer his reflections and commentary. We'll begin with another one of the Dust Bowl ballads. This is the great Watermelon Slim's version of Vigilante Man.
Have you seen that vigilante man? Have you seen the vigilante man? Have you seen the vigilante man? I've been hearing his name all over this land. Sometimes my trouble drags me down. Sometimes I don't know how I'm gonna make it around. Trouble overwhelms me like a wild stampeding herd of cattle. Vigilante man.
Seems to me that with that song, with Vigilante Man, most people who are picking it up now are probably picking it up from Ry Cooder rather than from Woody himself. That was on Into the Purple Valley. Richie Havens, for instance, does it on the in 1968 at the Woody Guthrie Memorial Concert, and he's just that really fast strumming, in a minor key. And Woody does it in a major key. But I think the most influential version now probably would be from Ry Cooder.
Why does a vigilante man? Tell me, why does a vigilante man carry his sawed-off shotgun in his hand? Would he shoot his brother and sister down? Have you seen the vigilante man? Have you seen the vigilante man? Have you seen the vigilante man? I've been hearing his name all over this land.
Ry Cooder was asked why that song is so popular. Wherever he plays, they always ask him for that, and he says, "Look, there's always going to be a vigilante man wherever you are, wherever you may be." That's one of those songs which can be adapted. He took it out of the Dust Bowl and brought it somewhere else, right? And even now, I know that in some of his later performances, like right after Trayvon Martin was shot, he would begin to weave Trayvon's name into his versions of the song during live performances. Yet again, and Trayvon was killed by a vigilante. It wasn't police violence that time. It was a lone vigilante who took it upon himself to dispatch this 17-year-old kid into the next world. What is that but the vigilante man, So it's an adaptable song that can be taken right out of the Dust Bowl and put to wherever you are. That has as much to do with Woody's ability to empathize, at least to empathize to the extent that he could get down on paper human struggle. And a struggle is a struggle is a struggle almost, So we take struggle songs and we take them out of this realm, out of this location, out of this time period, and we drop them into this one. And hey, it works, doesn't it? And I think Vigilante Man is a perfect example of that.
In 1945, Woody married Marjorie Mazia, and the couple had 4 children: Arlo, Jody, Nora, and Kathy, who died tragically in a fire at the age of 4. Marjorie's parents were the Greenblatts, Russian emigres from what is now Ukraine. The couple settled into an apartment in Brooklyn, and over the following years Woody's output increased, encompassing literally thousands of songs, poems, and stories. His writing continued to push boundaries. In addition to his familiar themes, he also explored topics of sexuality and eroticism. It was during this period as well that the first symptoms of Huntington's chorea, the genetic disease that would ultimately claim his life, appeared. These symptoms included disinhibition and other behavioral changes. At one point, Woody unfortunately wrote a sexually explicit letter to a female acquaintance, with legal consequences that included a stay in a so-called Center for the Treatment of Sexual Deviants. In his book, Woody Guthrie and Intimate Life, author and cultural critic Gus Stadler compassionately explores this period of Guthrie's life, making the point that the neurological disability did not prevent Woody from continuing to grow both as an artist and as a human being.
I was trying to learn more about the U.S. left's sense of sexual politics, queer politics, going back before gay liberation. And so I was, just kind of researching that. And at the same time, I had picked up Joe Klein's biography of Woody. And I read the stuff in Klein's bio about, there's a little bit of the erotic writing in there. And then he also notes the story about Guthrie being sent to the Deviants Treatment Center. And so I was really fascinated by that. But it just seemed to me like there was this depth and range to him as a person that I had never seen represented. And also some of the material was just so beautiful. He would paint in watercolor over his writing and his journals. The power of his imagination and the range of his thinking really overwhelmed me. And so at first I thought, okay, well, I'll write an article about Woody Guthrie and, sexual politics. And then about 2 days later, I was like, no, I'm going to write a book about this.
Well, I walked down to the railroad yard to watch that train roll by. I knew the train would roll that day, but I did not know what time. I did not know what time.
The kind of path that I had working in my head as I was thinking about some of these things was his relationship to the beats, which there's some kind of zeitgeist in the world that even if there's not a direct influence on Woody, there's something happening that's kind of generating this turn towards a very embodied abstraction and a very sexual abstraction. And I kept thinking, people sort of associate Woody with Jack Kerouac. He's the loner on the road. But I ended up thinking, really he's more like Ginsberg or Burroughs in some ways because of the interest in sexuality. And also because I think both of them, like Woody, understood sexuality as something that's formed through institutions. And again, these matters of how what's deviant gets determined. And Woody was a direct kind of victim of that. If you look at Howl, there's all material about Alan and his mother's time spent in, insane asylums. All of Burroughs' work on drug users and queer people. I mean, it's about freedom that has to be fought for in a world that's pressuring against it. And so I think it's helpful and enriching to understand him as part of that tradition.
Mm-hmm. The American multi-instrumentalist and composer David Amram was one of the original members of the Beat Generation, hanging out with Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg way back in the 1950s. In 2005, he was commissioned by Nora Guthrie and the Guthrie Foundation to compose This Land, Symphonic Variations on a theme by Woody Guthrie. We'll hear the finale, along with a brief snippet of Amram describing what it was like to meet Woody back in 1956.
And he said, "You want to meet Woody?" And I said, "You mean Woody Herman?" He said, "No, Woody Guthrie." So the next day we went over to a place close to where I lived on the Lower East Side, and there he was sitting in the woman's kitchen. We hung out all afternoon and most of the night. He was amazing, just as a storyteller and as a person. And he was this little wiry guy. Don't talk like that without keep my accent. But boy, he was heavy. And he was sort of like a real intellectual, among other things, and a storyteller and a Didn't talk about himself, just all the places he'd been and people that he knew and things he was interested in art and painting and poetry and politics and sports.
In Modern World Blues, his fascinating second book on Woody's life and career, Will Kaufman takes on what happened when Woody's perspective shifted in response to the modern age.
I realized there was so much more to Woody Guthrie. You know, he was really abstract painter. He was an abstract sculptor. He was an abstract writer. And he thought really, really hard about modernity. You know, he wrote songs about flying saucers. He wrote songs about rocket ships. He wrote songs about airplanes. You know, he wrote songs about plastic. There was just so much more to him. That ended up being Woody Guthrie's Modern World Blues.
Woody's life and music always seemed to embody a kind of do-it-yourself attitude, and this has been taken over by punk musicians, like the UK-based band Tantrum Zentrum. I invited Will to comment on their performance of Miss Pavlichenko, aka Lady Death, a song Woody wrote in praise of a Russian sniper who took out over 300 Nazis during World War II.
In your mountains and canyons, quiet as the deer. Down in your big trees, showing no fear. You lift up your sight and down comes a hand. For more than 300 Nazi dogs fell by your gun. In hot summer heat and cold wintry snow. In all kinds of weather, you track down your foe. The world will never love the way I have done. For more than 300 Nazi dogs fell by your gun.
In, I think it's American Radical, I do present Woody as having quite a violent streak to him. His songs, particularly during the war, are littered. You know, he dances on the graves of dead Nazis. He first was in favor of the atom bomb, the dropping of the atom bomb. You know, later he changed his mind about that. You know, he was saying, you know, you can't defeat Nazis and fascists with ice cream cones, as he said. You know, what did he have on his guitar? Well, Woody says, this machine kills fascists, you know. I don't know if you know, that phrase was borrowed from during the war, the home front factories, you know, have that sign on their lathes or on their bandsaws or you know, whatever, you know, their drill press. This machine kills fascists. In other words, we're all doing our bit. Right. For the war effort. And so it was quite savvy of Woody to take that. And I remember Nora, when I brought out this violence, this sort of theatrical violence that I think Woody used in his writing, she said, well, see, that's not the dad that I recognize, because she's out there trying to promote Woody as peacemaker, Woody as somebody who hates war, who says, no, I want to see everybody put their guns down and sit down by the side of the road and say, nope, I ain't shooting nobody, I ain't going to kill nobody. Woody wrote that at the time when the American left was against intervention in the Second World War. Right. There was the Hitler-Stalin pact going on. Entering the war against Hitler would have meant entering the war against the Soviet Union, the mother of the revolution. And then after Hitler, you know...
On account of the new situation.
Yeah. On account of the new situation. You know, all of a sudden the Russians are our friends and the Nazis are our enemies. So let's get them Nazis. It was like an exhilarating release because the American left was very uncomfortable during that Hitler-Stalin pact, you know, from 1939 to June of 41. They were very uncomfortable. So Woody became incredibly rhetorically violent. And then afterwards, really after the dropping of the atomic bomb and the Cold War sets in, and then Woody is beginning to become the peace advocate again.
Which speaks to his constant reinvention in that.
Yes, indeed. There's always a new situation. And I think he was so sensitive to be able to adapt to it without having to make any bones about it. It's a new situation now.
That's what I do. Yeah, that's
what I do. Yeah,
that's my job.
Buy your gun for more than 300 Nazis. Throw by your gun. Throw by your gun. Throw by your gun for more than 300 Nazis. Throw by your gun. Throw by your gun. Hey, throw by your gun for more than 300.
That same raw feeling and do-it-yourself expressiveness finds a home in the music of Sihasin, the duo created by the brother-sister act of Clayson and Janada Benali, from the Benali family of activists and musicians of the Navajo Nation in Arizona. Here they take on Mean Things Happening in This World, one of the many unpublished and previously undiscovered song lyrics gradually being released to musicians and composers by the Guthrie Foundation.
Look at the big war across the sea. I'm sure that you'll agree. There's mean things happening in this world. I ain't gonna cry and die on my way all the time. There's mean things happening in this world. There's mean things happening in this world.
Learning about Marjorie's Jewish heritage gave Woody yet another source of inspiration. His lyrics to Hanukkah Hanukkah were set to music by Frank London of the Klezmatics. Here they're performed by Anna and Angelina Zawalska, the Alibi Sisters, a klezmer ensemble based in Ukraine, and singing in a mix of Ukrainian and Yiddish.
Es ist Hanukkah, Hanukkah, kusch nach Amol. Wir singen und tanzen herum auf den Pol. Dein Tischel ist süß und noch süßer dein Kohl. Es ist Hanukkah, Hanukkah Zeit. Уже Hanukkah йде, радіть усі. Для мами і тата дарунки пісні. Для брата, сестри не шкодую прикрас. Медовий Хануки час. Вже Ханука йде, обіймів тепло. І вдень, і вночі відганяй все зло. Як грошей нема, відкладай про запас. Медової Хануки час.
A lot of us who grew up in lefty progressive households had the chance to hear Woody's children's songs, both on the family turntable and at the left-wing summer camps that all of us kids attended. I asked Gus Stadler about those wonderful songs.
I like to swim in my water. I like to swim in my water. Water, water, and water. Swim, swim, swimmy, I swim.
You know, I love those records, and I was really seduced by it. And it helped me think a lot, actually, too, about his understanding of the body. Because I think what brought such pleasure and excitement to him in writing songs like that was his sense that children's bodies aren't disciplined in the way that adults' bodies are. And so like children move in silly ways, and and they like really enjoy movement, like shaking hands. There's a whole song about shaking hands.
Right.
When I walk in our door, you come patter across the floor, and you shake it up and down. How'd you do? How'd you do? And you shake it up and down. How'd you do?
And it's possible again, like, well, if you've seen your mother's body become captured by this horrible disease, and you're maybe starting to experience some aspects of that yourself. I mean, what is a better medium for freeing the body from social restrictions than children?
Take me riding in the car, take me riding in the car, take you riding in my car, I'll take you riding in my car.
One thing that was really important to me was just to show, as part of a history of the American left, that there was joy in these leftist circles of the 30s and 40s, or that we kind of associate with militancy and serious labor politics and sometimes communist orthodoxy, etc. And like all of those things were there, but there was also joy and desire and excitement, and this whole emotional side of what it means to be a leftist is really quite rich, and it's not about just like eliminating your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, like he's the perfect figure for that. Like, having a song like the car song, that's just so much fun. And, like the funny horn, I'm not even trying to imitate.
I'm gonna let you blow the horn. I'm gonna let you blow the horn. Well, I'll take you riding in my car.
But that just illustrates so well, again, like the kind of breadth of experience that he brought to being like a leftist.
In recent years, it's come to light that Woody and Marjorie's landlord in Brooklyn was one Fred C. Trump, whose son went on to become the President of the United States. Woody wrote words about Fred Trump, and these were more recently unearthed by Will Kaufman, who tells us the story. Here's Woody Guthrie's Old Man Trump as performed by the California group the Missin Cousins. And as a special bonus, I've included a short animated clip from Tim Grimm's wonderful song, Woody's Landlord. I know you'll enjoy them.
I think it was like 2009 when I first came across those verses against his Brooklyn landlord, Fred Trump, and the racism. I took I transcribed all of them and kept them in my computer. In 2016, Donald Trump was saying, my legacy is my father's legacy.
Right.
And that got me thinking about, well, Woody Guthrie has something to say about your father's legacy.
Beach Haven ain't my home, I just can't pay the rent. My money's down the drain, my soul is badly bent. Beach Haven is a haven where only white folks roam. No, 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 old man Trump. Beach Haven ain't my home. No, 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 old man Trump. Beach Haven ain't my home.
I think it's important to set the record straight. Woody never wrote a song called Old Man Trump.
Got it.
He never did that. That is the title that Ryan Harvey gave to the song that was fashioned from the various fragments from notebooks and letters that I had published. He took those things and put them together into a song called Old Man Trump. And that's with Nora Guthrie's approval.
I had a dream that Woody's son played in the sandbox with Donald Trump. And Arlo sang and shook his head while Donald's face was turning red. He's a bully, he's a punk, he's made of money, that's what Arlo thought. When Arlo got to, this land is your land, Trump's little fingers started throwing sand.
In the second half of his career, Alan Lomax worked intensely on a project called Cantometrics, a method for analyzing and quantifying song styles from all around the world. I found Woody's song The Great Los Angeles Flood included in the Cantometrics training tapes as a demonstration of the four-line strophe. You can hear the feeling in Lomax's voice as he introduces the song, remembering the time in 1939 when Woody recorded it for him at the Library of Congress. It makes a perfect segue into my discussion with Will Kaufman over Woody's likely response to the ongoing crisis of climate change.
Now a four-phrase American ballad that my old friend Woody Guthrie sang for me in Washington in 1939.
Kind friend, do you remember on that fatal New Year's night? The lights of old Los Angeles was a-flickering oh so bright. A cloudburst hit the mountains, it swept away our homes, and 100 souls was taken in that fatal New Year's flood. 'Twas in the early springtime of 1934.
It was an environmental disaster that made him who he was to some extent. The Dust Bowl, which was a product of exploiting the land for quick cash crops. You really do get a sense of an environmental awareness in his writing. And the song, The Grand Coulee Dam, is a monument to the worst kind of ecological mistake. Would he have acknowledged it? I think he would have. But I think it's pretty reasonable to suggest that he would have been aware of climate change, and I think he would have been doing something about it.
Right.
You know, I think he would have been there. I really do.
Woody's best-known song, This Land Is Your Land, has come under a fair share of criticism from Native American activists. Will Kaufman.
There was a moment that's a kind of famous one in the life of Pete Seeger, where he and someone else are at the Resurrection City in Washington, D.C., I think about 1968 or 69, and they're singing This Land Is Your Land. And then Henry Crow Dog, a Lakota activist, comes up to them and said, "You're wrong. This land was made for me. It's our land." And then like Pete and and Fred are going, "Wow, that's right. Well, I don't know. Should we sing this song? Should we sing this song?" And then, Crow Dog says, basically, "I'm only fucking with you. As long as we are here to get something done, But it did make Pete think, and for a long time he couldn't sing the song. And then he began to sing verses written by Cappy Israel of "This land was stole by you from me," and which I just think just makes the song more interesting, that it does contain contradictions and the possibility for clapback. Let's accept that not everyone will see it as the great inclusive anthem that Woody intended it to be. You can't erase history.
Native American musician and activist Keith Secola, a member of the Anishinaabe Nation, has translated This Land Is Your Land into Anishinaabe, and the result is that the meaning of the lyrics gets wonderfully flipped. Here he is in performance, describing a conversation with Arlo about what happens to Woody's words when they're translated.
I got to tell him the worldview of this song in Anishinaabe. Akin Gabil Shatamagoya means this earth, we were made for her. And I said, your dad would love this. And he said he would, because the worldview changes. This land was made for you and me. But when you sing it in Anishinaabe, it says we were made for her. And so he likes this worldview, and it's a worldview that's a lot of the change. It's at that crux of change where people can't see things that are so simple to some people. Anishinaabe, Gibabaya, Ogiwa Bandan, Gage Gigishe, Gamashkwa Wakokal, Gashgadanane, Aki Gabi Oshitamagoyan, Owine Dakim, Owige Dakim.
I vividly remember that day in January 2009, listening to the Obama inauguration on the radio and hearing Pete, along with Bruce Springsteen and Tao Rodriguez Seeger, and wondering, Will they get to those verses?
Obama asked Springsteen to come and perform, and Springsteen said, I will if I can bring Pete Seeger down to join me. And Pete said, I will come if I can sing all of the verses that Woody wrote. Otherwise, I'm not coming. No audience this big is ever going to hear the song again at one time. So I want to make sure that I put out there what Woody wrote. And so that's how that happened.
Squares of the city, by the shadow of the steeple, by the relief office, I saw my people as they stood there hungry. I stood whistling. This land was made for you and me. A great high wall tried to stop me. Great big sign there. Private property. On the other side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me.
The thing that I ended up really most moved by, most engaged by, was just his sort of relentless sympathy for and connection with like the most abjected people. That included poor underclass, but it also included people in deviance treatment centers or people in hospitals, people in jails. I think he always moved towards the people who were most shamed, most dehumanized. To the extent that I think of him as a hero, it has the most to do with that quality.
And that's what makes him still relevant today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away, and that's something we need.
More than 50 years after he left us, Woody's lyrics, imagination, and deep empathy for human struggle continue to inspire us everywhere around the world. Here's Benya Stewart, an American musician and English teacher, originally from Ohio, now living in Ukraine, with his adaptation of So Long It's Been Good to Know You.
Found out the rule. They're not going back to their Soviet chains. No, they'll fight to the death for a sovereign Ukraine, singing so long. It's been good to know you so long. It's been good to know you well so long. It's been good to know you. It's a mighty big war that's gotta be won. Gotta be one. Oh,
As we were completing this podcast episode, we heard from Woody's publishers, TRO Essex. They wanted us to know that on July 14th, Woody's birthday, they'd be issuing a previously unheard recording of Woody himself performing Deportee, Plane Wreck at Los Gatos. The song was written in 1948 after a tragic plane crash that killed 28 migrant farm workers, and it remains one of Woody's most powerful protest songs. Deportee, Woody's home tape, is a version recorded at Woody's apartment in Brooklyn sometime in the early 1950s. They very kindly gave us permission to share this recording with you.
See all my good friends blow here just like dry leaves. Radio calls us just some more deportees.
I'm Warren Senders, and this has been Cool Tunes for a Hot Planet, Episode 20, Thinking About Woody. Complete videos of my interviews with both Will Kaufman and Gus Stadler will be available on the podcast website, along with links to the Guthrie Foundation and to the singers and musicians represented on this video. For the credit crawl, we're going to go out with Rhiannon Giddens and the Resistance Revival Chorus singing All You Fascists Bound to Lose. See you next time.